Okay, now it's 1:59, so I think the event start now. It's already live. Yep, it's live on Facebook now. And first of all, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all the editors and speakers, and it's really a great honor and to have be assigned to be the moderator of the event today. And my name Kai Viset. I am the former Vice President of ASEAN Vision Institute and now serving as the advisor to ASEAN Vision Institute. And today is one of the key events for AVIs. It's a launch of the book on ASEAN Climate Change Response, which is the collaboration between CAS in Hong Kong and ASEAN Vision Institute. And on behalf of the editors, we have three editors, namely Dr. Christian Hubner and Ms. Jaya and me are the editor of the book. We would like to express our sincere thanks to our authors for this book, for spending valuable times and time to work on this very timely and important product, one of the key products amid this global crisis. And we also would like to thank to CAS for the financial support and assistance, particularly for the teams, Mr. Benedict Chang, and also all the supporting team from CAS and ASEAN Vision Institute. And please allow me to provide a brief introduction about the book. The book covers the ASEAN region response to climate change. We cover three main themes, from climate change adaptation to climate change mitigation and finance. And they have different chapters that covered by authors from ASEAN regions, from Indonesia, from Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia. And as for the agenda of today, we will start with the remark provided by Dr. Alfredo, followed by our different authors. That we have three authors here represent different themes, from adaptation, climate change adaptation, climate change mitigations, and then climate change finance. And then we will and I would also like to highlight that we have a slight change in the agenda. We will have presentations by each author for 15 minutes, and then we have the question and answer for 10 minutes. And for the audience, thank you very much for attending. And if you have any question, please drop the message in the chat box here, or post on our Facebook page. We will send the question to our author and address accordingly. And after the presentation, we will have the closing remark by Dr. Christian Hubner, who is also an editor and the regional director for CAS in Hong Kong. And before moving into the main agenda, I would like to introduce our honorable guests and authors. And so could you share the slide of the author profile, please? Sophia, or who is in charge of the slide, please share the profile of our distinguished panelists and honorable guests and panelists, please. Without further ado, while waiting for the team to share the slide, please allow me to provide a brief background of our honorable guest, Dr. Alfredo. He's the chief editor from ASEAN Vision Institute, and then follow. I'm sorry. Please allow me to check the background. I'm very sorry for the technical problem that we have in here. So, okay, so let me please allow to introduce Dr. Alfredo. Dr. Alfredo is Director for Research of Asian Vision Institute. He has 30 years of working experience in telecommunication, business, project management, business planning, and feasibility studies. Dr. Alfredo presently is the Executive Vice President for Business Development of Best Cable Corporation, based in Singapore and Kota Kinabalu for the Kim Agar submarine terrestrial project. In the concurrent appointment, he's presently the CEO of EA Trickling Corporation. In previous job, he was formerly the COO of Domestic Satellite Philippines Inc. And Dr. Alfredo served as Dean of the Graduate School of Management and Economics, Penang Sastra University of Cambodia from 2004 to 2011, appointed by the Senior Minister of Education of Royal Government of Cambodia, Professor of Strategic Management. Please welcome Dr. Alfredo. And the next, please allow me to introduce our next speaker. Please move next slide, please. Dr. Christian Hubner, Director of RECAS. Since July 1st, 2019, Dr. Christian Hubner is Director of Regional Program Energy Security and Climate Change in Asia Pacific of the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation, based in Hong Kong and China. Before, he has been the head of Regional Program Energy Security and Climate Change in Latin America of Konrad-Adenauer Foundation, based in Lima, Peru. Prior to his position, he has worked as coordinator for environmental, climate, and energy policy in the CAS headquarters. His thematic area are climate neutrality, politics of decarbonization, resource security, and digital sustainability with blockchain, AI, and IoT. The 3 years before joining CAS, Dr. Christian Hubner has been research associate at a research institute of the Leibniz Associations. There, as a trained economist, his focus has been on environmental economic analysis of ecosystem services. Please welcome Dr. Christian Hubner. And the next is our speaker, one of our authors, and Dr. Sitzpat. Dr. Sitzpat is a climate change specialist linking to natural resources management and biodiversity conservation. He has had more than 20 years implementing, teaching, researching, and evaluating natural resource management, biodiversity conservation, and climate change programming in Cambodia, especially in Mekong, the Peninsula Lake region, and coastal area. Dr. Sitzpat currently serves as Vice Dean for Faculty of Development Studies and coordinator of Master of Science in Climate Change at Royal University of Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Dr. Sitzpat has worked extensively and collaborated with numerous projects throughout Cambodia to develop relevant programming for both university-level students and natural resource management and climate change professionals. He has a strong background in research and has worked throughout the country with numerous organizations and donors, including ADB, the World Bank, European Union, GIZ, etc., and numerous international and local NGOs. Our next speaker is Mr. Pautai Sinampol. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Is a PhD candidate at the Finnish School of Environment and Society, the Australian National University. He's also a lecturer in human geography at the Department of Geography, Chiang Mai University. His research interests are related to qualitative and participatory research in order to understand local initiative under multi-level governance with stakeholders in disaster risk management, particularly in water resources, climate change, and haze pollution. And our last but not least speaker, next one, please. Could you show next slide for our next speaker? Okay, sorry, where's the background for Mr. Ristijana. We are really sorry that we missed the flight from Mr. Ristijana, and sorry for the technical problems. I would now like to move on to our main agenda. Would like to hand our floor to Dr. Alfredo for the opening remark. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here in today's webinar. I want to thank Dr. Keo Pisset for his introduction and for organizing today's exciting book launch event. The book assembles scholars from ASEAN countries who completed the book. Dr. Yanto and Mr. Aris from Indonesia, Mrs. Letu is from Vietnam, Dr. Nutavikom and co-authors came from Thailand, and the rest of the authors, Dr. Tri and Raj Setik, Dr. Sopat, Dr. Ratana, Dr. Serey, and Dr. Piakday, Dr. Nida, and Ms. Mitona are all Cambodians. To you all, on behalf of AVI, our sincere thanks and appreciation. Without your scholarly contributions, this book will not be a reality. The Asian Vision Institute is proud to partner with Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung for this book on ASEAN Climate Change Response. I imagine when the authors, Dr. Keo and Ms. Chakriya, are approached with this idea for the book, I said to myself, what a great way to keep Dr. Keo and Chakriya busy. But seriously, the ABI believes that the convergence of so many enormous world events makes this book especially timely. The pandemic, the Russia and Ukraine war, the conflict in Myanmar and South China Sea, the recession that followed and looming food insecurity, and Cambodia's critical efforts around ASEAN chairmanship. And all of these are occurring amidst levels of climate emergency we have not seen in a century. These are precisely the kind of events that present opportunities to update our social contract, our collaboration, our cooperativeness with neighboring countries. It sets out what the government can do and cannot do. AVI didn't want to miss its chance to put some bold and innovative ideas on the table. Information about the causes and effects of climate emergency, habitat destruction, and loss of biodiversity is readily available. There is also no shortage of advice and encouragement as to what we can do about these present and immediate threats. ABI's role is to make detailed climate data available to the global community, including the public, policymakers and decision makers, and scientific and planning agencies. While it's not the ABI's role to direct fiscal policy, it is our role to offer fact-based ideas that could improve our nation's economy, especially for those struggling ASEANs who would more fully reap its rewards. We all know that climate change is one of the most complex issues facing us today. It involves many socio-political, economic, and ethical dimensions. Climate change is a problem felt on both global and local scales that will be around for many years to come. Carbon dioxide, the heat-trapping greenhouse gas, has driven recent global warming, and the oceans take a while to respond to warming and will continue to affect future generations. Therefore, humanity is committed to some level of climate change. So the challenge is, how much climate change? What are ways to respond to lessen climate change? what effective ways each one of us can make a difference? Answering those questions is one of the reasons we're eager to publish this book. This workshop will discuss the current outlook of climate actions undertaken in the region in three key aspects: mitigation, adaptation, and financial mechanism. Then the panel will explore the future development of climate action in the region. Mitigation means simply reducing climate change, but this is a challenge, easier said than done. Do we really have the will to reduce sources of these gases? Can we stop burning of fossil fuels for electricity, heat, or transport? Adaptation means adapting to life in a changing climate. It involves adjusting to actual or expected future climate. Our goal here is to reduce our vulnerability to the harmful effects of climate change. For example, extreme weather events or food insecurity. Importantly, working towards climate resilience in Southeast Asia, the book also provides readers the financial mechanism of climate change, provides reviews of funding mechanism of climate changes at the global and regional level. In many ways, I see the book as an effort to focus on sustainable development experience in Southeast Asia, with a focus on Cambodia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam. The book aims, as you can read in the introduction, to investigate ASEAN efforts in response to climate change. It serves as a policy-oriented research, providing diverse perspective from policy advisors, researchers, investors, and practitioners. The succeeding chapters scholarly discussed and documented case studies of climate change mitigation and adaptation in Southeast Asia. Lessons learned point towards some promising solutions in global government governance. We now all know that the Earth is in grave danger. The conditions for human life are severely threatened. There have been previous radical shifts of climate, as well as catastrophic mass extinction across for almost 4 billion years history of life on Earth. What is unique about this particular crisis is that we have no doubt what is causing it. We are the human being causing it. So since we are the cause of this climate change crisis, what are practical ways to respond in lessening climate change? There are a dozen easy, effective ways each one of us can make a difference. Let us speak up. Power your home with renewable energy. Invest in energy efficient appliances. Actually, eat only food you buy and compost what you cannot. Pull the plugs. Drive an efficient, fuel-efficient vehicle. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Can we do that? Well, thank you for joining us today. We hope you'll pick up your free copy of the book soon, and especially engage in conversations. We're sure it will start. I'm now pleased to turn the program over to the book's co-authors, my colleague, Dr. Kaya Pisset, along with Bip Chakriya. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fridos, for the good overview of our books and also your insight with regard to climate change. This really set a good introduction for our discussion today. And I would now like to turn the floor to Mr. Aris Stijana. I'm sorry that we forgot, we missed his short bio, but please allow me to give a brief introduction about him. Mr. Aris is a functional public relations officer in the Center for Standardized of Disaster and Climate Change Instruments, Ministry of Environment and Forestry, and the Republic of Indonesia. Have worked in the Ministry of Forestry since 2001 as a staff and got promotion to the head of subsection of administrative at the Mindanao Ministry and Environment Research and Development Institute, North Sulawesi Province from 2016 to 2017. Then he became the head of the program and evaluation section at Makassar Forestry and Environment Research and Development Institute, South Sulawesi Province from 2017 to 2019. He has learned forestry since he was in the senior high school. He has completed his master's degree majoring in ecology and forest resources, Park Chung-hee School of Public Policy, and Jeonnam University, the Republic of Korea. He has been involved in some projects with overseas institutions like KFW. Mr. Aris and his team manage a forest program for protection of mangrove forests in Indonesia. And I would now like to turn the floor to Mr. Aris to give the introductions on the topics on Indonesia climate change mitigation. Mr. Aris, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Teopiset. It's introduced me very complete. I'm really happy can join on this event because it's very important and special event for me. So next to the point, I will present my presentation. I will share by myself or some committee will share for me.
Could the host, could you share the slide for Mr. Aris?
Or I will can share by
please
myself.
try to share the slide. Yeah, please
Okay,
share the slide.
Everyone can see my presentation.
Yes,
Yes,
you can see now.
Yes, I will present my chapter with entitled Overview of Indonesia. Climate change mitigation lesson from forestry sector in Indonesia. This is my content of chapter. The first is introduction. The second, Indonesia's forest and climate profile. The third is overview of forest mitigation policies in Indonesia. And then the fourth is next challenges and way forward. For the introduction, here like FAO mentioned in 2010 that the globally tropical forest loss has reached 8.3 million hectares per year during 1990 until 2000 to 5.2 million hectares per year during 2000 until 2010. Tropical forests contributed about 90% of global deforestation during the period 2001 till 2015, like Rowling mentioned. And then in absolute term, global forest area decreased by 178 million hectares between 1990 and 2020, like FAO and UNEP mentioned. However, challenges are remaining, like in the opening remark. There is a limitation of regional organizations, where regional organizations tend to be subjected to political influence from member states, and whether these organizations having political, economic, and functional resources and experience could expand their activities to cover climate change. So that's why here we need to revisit climate mitigation to evaluate the progress to find the need of improvement, like in ASEAN level, fully committed in reducing global emission. And then in line with that, this paper aims to examine an update of climate change mitigation policies and measures on forestry sector by taking lesson from Indonesia for sure. Indonesia forest and climate profile. Indonesia has 64% of national forest area of total terrestrial land, with divided by function like conservation forest, protection forest, limited production forest, permanent production forest, convertible production forest, and then non-forest area. This is illustrated key facts of Indonesia's socioeconomic parameter in general. Those forest and environment resources are direct and indirectly contribute to the quality of Indonesian human living. The primary roles of forest and environmental resources in supporting human living, especially rural livelihoods, are supporting current consumption, providing safety nets in response to shock and gap filling of seasonal shortfalls, and providing means to accumulate assistance, providing a pathway out of poverty. It's important to revisit profile of Indonesia forest and climate vulnerability to find the linkage between the two. Indonesia's climate risk index score of 74, ranks 72 of 180 countries by 2018. Here, Indonesia shows lower per capita carbon dioxide emission. Provide interactive map describing per capita greenhouse gas emission. This is measured in tons per person per year. Here, we see that many of the world's smaller countries are the largest per capita emitters. These countries, such as Guyana, Brunei, Botswana, the United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait, tend to be large oil and or gas producers. Indonesia shows lower per capita carbon dioxide emission that is 3.62 metric ton at 2018. Here we can see the national emission from forestry and peatlands with the data from 2000 until 2018. That show the emission level of the forestry sector and peatlands. Here, the implementation of a mitigation measure has resulted in a reduction in the level of emission, particularly in the case of emission from peat fires. We can see in the next slide historical emission from deforestation, forest degradation, and associated peat decomposition. Historical emission from deforestation, forest degradation, and the associated peat decomposition from 1990 to 2012 has been developed as main source of the Indonesia forest reference emission level. We call it EFREL, submitted to the UNFCCC, the data from MOF 2016. That's the EFREL from deforestation and degradation was set at 0.351 gigaton carbon dioxide equivalent. For the reference period 1990 until 2012, emissions from deforestation are dominant, then followed by emission from peat decomposition. And the rest is emission from forest degradation. Here we can see the annual emission from deforestation and forest degradation. Using different time, that MOF generates the baseline emission from the average emission. For research-based payment estimation, like we can see on the figure here, based on this approach, Indonesia has reduced 17 million ton CO2 equivalent emission from both avoided deforestation and forest degradation in 2017. Avoided emission from 2016 2017 deforestation is 8 million ton CO2 equivalent, while emission reduction from forest degradation is about 8.6 million ton CO2 equivalent. The trend of deforestation in Indonesia, we can see like in the figure that this emission profile is highly related to historical deforestation for sure. The highest deforestation occurred at 1996 until 2000 period, and tend to slow it down until 2014, and then deforestation was increased again at 2014 until 2015. Fortunately, then can be controlled by 2016, like we can see in the figure here. So what the overview of forest mitigation policies in Indonesia? The first, in global context, Indonesia has shown a strong commitment to tackle forest conservation by ratifying 3 Rio conventions. And then in the nation level, Indonesia issued various programs to combat deforestation and forest degradation, including forest landscape restoration, watershed revitalization, social forestry, and land rehabilitation national movement, as well as improving management of conservation areas and essential ecosystem areas. And then Indonesia also committed to update national determined contribution (NDC) and accelerate greenhouse gas emission reduction by following 2030 program. And then for the peatland ecosystem restoration, the other program and intervention has been initiated. Ecosystem restoration focuses on peatland. Indonesia, as states an update in the NDC, set a peat restoration target of 2.5 billion hectare. And then what we have done for mitigation policies in Indonesia, that is, we have integrated system to monitor forest and land fire, including near real-time hotspot information. We call it Sipongi. You can find in our website. And then the next program is remote sensing-based monitoring system, completed with terrestrial information, and then we call it Simontana. So what next challenge and way forward? Here, Indonesia may face some challenge in achieving NDC target. The first challenge is emergence of new policies, such as Law number 11, 2020 on job creation. To some extent, indicates a risk of increasing deforestation and forest degradation. The job creation law is designed to facilitate investment in order to simplify the licensing mechanism. One of the consequences is that the law cuts a number of things, and then including the adjustment of environmental impact analysis. Furthermore, the government Ministry of Environment and Forestry has a further task to monitor and control for the quality standard that must be set in environmental quality. And then the second is about the food estate development. The second is new policy. This policy promoted by the government of Indonesia was food estate development to support food security and community welfare. However, this policy requires a large area of establishment. Therefore, there is an increasing the need for land, including forest areas allocated for food estate establishment. A positive argument have been provided to avoid forest conversion to food estate. Food estate within forest area is not in the form of monoculture of seasonal crops. It is more relevant in the form of agroforestry under the social forestry mechanism. Social forestry in supporting food security is allowed to be carried out in production and protected forest areas. And then the 3 and 4 is population growth for sure and investment in the mining sector. However, deforestation is predicted to be continued in the future for sure. This is because investment in the mining sector, such as coal growth, open pit mining, is still highly attractive, along with oil palm plantation. The transmigration program may not be a government priority, but forest clearing by local residents is expected to still happen. Therefore, the driving force of deforestation and degradation in the future are expected to remain relatively the same. Therefore, the government needs to take new economic paradigm for land efficiency priority. So for the closing here, we can harmonizing cross-sectoral policies and programs, coordination between government level, and additional investment on forest and climate mitigation technologies at least need to be strengthened. That's my presentation from me. Thank you so much for your attention. The time I give back to you to Dr. Kelpiset. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aris, for very brief, concise, and informative on the effort for climate change mitigation in Indonesia. And we now, the floor is open for question and answer, and for 10 minutes actually for each author. And we have received 2 questions. The first question is on slide number 10, for the total annual emissions, why there is a dramatically drop of emission from 2013 to 2014. That's the first questions. And the second questions, you can see there's a decline of the rate of deforestation in Indonesia, and also along with the national policies on greenhouse gas mitigation. So do you see any positive prospect for decarbonizations by 2050 in Indonesia? So that is the second questions. Is the question clear to you? Please unmute. You are still mute, Mr. Aris.
Excuse me, can you repeat the question, because here very heavy rain, I can hear clearly.
Okay, so there are 2 questions. First question is on the slide number 10. The total emissions, there is a dramatic drop of the emission from 2013 to 2014. So what are the reasons behind that drop? And second, is it clear to you, the first question?
Yes.
Okay, for the second questions, we see on the graph, there is a decline of deforestation, rate of deforestation in Indonesia, along with the government policy, a number of government policy on greenhouse gas mitigations. So is there any positive prospect for decarbonizations, or we call carbon neutral, by 2050 in Indonesia? Thank you.
Yes. Okay. I will answer for the second question first. About the deforestation and then related to carbon in 2050. In Indonesia, we are very optimistic to combat the deforestation. So we combat the like illegal logging and then like some criminal in forestry sector. We can combat it with the really high effort for sure. So we are really optimistic that when the deforestation decrease, so that means the climate change also will be decreased. So also equal to that means if the forest condition in Indonesia, especially in Indonesia, is good, that means also we can what can I call, like we can adaptation for sure, adaptation, and then the point is when the deforestation decrease, that means the life will be good for sure, because climate change we can control it. That's for the second question, and then for the first question is about the data on the 10th slide is about annual emission, why that emission decrease. Okay. Yeah, in 2014, we also combat with the high effort like forestry sector criminal because at the time we get some on the other side, we get some direction from our president that we have to combat the like illegal logging and then the like the other criminal in forestry sector. So we can continue to the forestry development and environment also, but the condition like you know always like up and down, depend on the situation in our country, because Indonesia is the large country, especially for forestry sector. So we have to keep and secure to our forest land area with the large area. Maybe at the time we can solve the problem, but the other hand, the condition like up and down depend on the condition. Like politic and then economic, that's also relates to the condition. That's from my answer.
Thank you, Mr. Aris, for very elaborate answer. And so please allow me to go to another round of questions. We have also received question from Zoom from from Kim Liang Tang. Greeting, Mr. Aris. The question to you is, what are the biggest impact of climate change for Indonesia and how the government dealing with those challenges? And the second question, what are the role of the Indonesian citizens or private sector in contributing to protect the environment, or maybe specifically to address climate change?
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you to Mr. or Miss Kim Liang Tang. That what are biggest impact of climate change for Indonesia and how government dealing with those challenges? Okay, the biggest impact for climate change in Indonesia, for sure, about the livelihood. So when we get the climate change, like the result of farm plantation getting decreased because of irregular weather, like because of climate change. So how government dealing with those challenges? So like I mentioned in my presentation, that especially for Ministry of Environment and Forestry in the Republic of Indonesia, we really commitment to do some effort in forestry sector, like I mentioned in my presentation about our program. What have we done? Like we launched Sumontana, Sipongi, like that, and then peatland ecosystem restoration to make the result of farm plantation getting increased. And then also we are committed to update nationally determined contribution and accelerate the greenhouse gas emission reduction for NETSING 2030. So what are the role of the Indonesia citizen or private sector contribute to protect the environmental? Yes, for sure. The role of Indonesia citizen and private sector, like I mentioned in my presentation, that we invite them to contribute together in mitigation and climate change. We make some regulation, like standard instrument to combat like negative issues in Indonesia. So we are in Indonesia very optimistic. In the future, we can mitigate the climate change. Thank you.
Okay, yep. Thank you very much, Mr. Aris, for the explanations. And with due to our time limit, we would like to close the session for the topic on climate change mitigation for now. And please give a round of applause for Mr. Aris for his contribution and presentations. And so I would now like to move on to the next topic on climate change adaptations. Our presenter today is Mr. Pautai Sin Ambol. He's representing his team to give presentations on the topic, actually under the theme of climate change adaptations, and also represent his co-author team on the topic as well. So Mr. Pautai, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pisset, for your introduction, and thank you so much for all audiences to join the book launching event today. So on behalf of the author team, I would like to present my research on the book chapter today, which is the climate change and water adaptation in Thailand. So in the author team, we have Dr. Nattavikom Pantuwong Pakdi as a corresponding author, and we also have Dr. Yanin Jiwagidakan Huyagon and me, Pautai Sinampon, from the Department of Geography, Faculty of Social Science, Chiang Mai University, Thailand, as a presenter today. So for the outline of the presentation, I would like to talk about the situation and knowledge of climate change and water in Thailand, and also provide a basic backgrounds about the constraints from the government organizations in water resource management. I will also outline some adaptation cases, 4 adaptation cases in Thailand that support the current situation and knowledge about climate change and water adaptation in Thailand. And we also put some argument and the ways forward to better adaptation in terms of water-related disaster induced by climate change. So in terms of the situation and the knowledge of climate change and waters in Thailand, we would like to address that climate change is an existential global threat with no exemption to social and economic development of Thailand. Under the intensifying stream of modernization, it's very challenging for Thai people to maintain traditional ways of living with nature. Growing trends of industrialization, urban settlement, and commercial agriculture put many Thai people to exposed to threats from water-related disasters, such as flash floods, severe droughts, and seawater encroachment. Under ongoing risks, our climate policy has been shifted in accordance with changing focal point of IPCC assessment reports from impact analysis to vulnerability and adaptation analysis. Currently, adaptation is being facilitated by several actions. For example, early warning systems, integrated water resource management, agroforestry, and coastal reforestation of mangroves. In terms of IWRM or integrated water resource management, the promotion of mixed strategies between engineering practices and non-structural approaches require the incorporation of societal concerns together with ecological aspects of water management. In Thailand, flooding and drought affect Thailand's economy, food security, and vulnerable communities. Our National Adaptation Policy, or NAP, which was promulgated in 2018, assigned the pre-2020 adaptation task in order to develop the early warning system. And also, we provide the post-2050 adaptation task to foster efficient use of water, occupational training, crop insurance, soil water rehabilitation, and capacity building. According to the situation and the knowledge in our country, this book chapter would like to shed light on pragmatic options to promote greater adaptability to water-related issues under climate change. However, one of the most challenging issues we have to explore before achieving greater adaptability in water sector of Thailand is the constraints from the government organizations. I would like to say that a continual effort of integrating various public departments in water, groundwater, environmental management, land, electricity generation, and etc. has instead turned to overlapping responsibilities due to the absence of meaningful collaboration. In addition, a centralized governance system of Thailand hinders local authorities and excludes local voices from co-managing water, despite the fact that they actually know about the situations in their areas. On the contrary, the government should support funding and knowledge for enhancing resilience instead of isolating them to be self-reliant in adaptations. Last but not least, local administrative organizations are lacking of their authorities to invest in disaster prevention. When disaster happens, they have to raise a critical plan to receive extra budget from the central government instead of relying on their own budgets. So this is a problem and the constraints from the government side. The governance system in adaptation seems to be incomplete, but the government itself seeks some pragmatic actions to deal with constraints from the government itself. So I would like to raise 4 adaptation cases in order to reflect the situation at this moment. So for the first case study, we would like to talk about early warning system and water storage facilities, which were driven by the government to solve drought-related problems in the last 5 years. The central government asked farmers to grow cassava as a drought-resilient plant and changed their pluging technique to save water, and also created 421 water detention basins. With this central planning, some farmers could not access adequate assistance from the government. In the second case studies, we turn our focus to understand the relationship between land tenure and adaptive capacity of people in Bangkok during the major flooding in 2011, which was last 10 years ago. So we divide them into 4 groups, ranging from the highest tenure security to the lowest one, including the first group, the freehold residents who hold the full land rights with formal deeds. The second group is the former rent residents who hold some land rights with formal contracts. The third group are the informal rent residents who hold some land rights without contracts. And the last group, the invaded ones who do not hold any land rights, such as informal settlements, squatters, slum, and so on. According to this, we found a very interesting result because it does not mean that people having secure land tenure always have adaptive capacity. Households who rent the land seem to be the most vulnerable group because of the conflicts between landlords and renters, while the invaded one and the freeholds have similar level of coping capacity instead. So urban land rights in Bangkok represent an excellent example of the importance of understanding land rights as a factor of coping with climate-induced flooding risks. Another vulnerable group in climate and water adaptation we should explore is the children. In the regime of child-centered adaptation, children are more at risk of climate change than adults, mainly because they are weaker and less able to dissipate heat. Even though children are often defined as one of the most vulnerable social units, they can be the agent of change in climate adaptation too. So as we review several studies in northern Thailand, we found that girls and young women in particular are constantly worried that climate change in the combination with effects from deforestation, expansion of commercial farmland, and growing demand for cash crops will negatively impact on their water resource. The use of integrative methods between community-based traditions and learning to appreciate nature and worry about changing climate conditions will help the young generation to better adapt. To manage water in the face of climate change, children apply strategies including river cleaning, building small dams and reservoirs for water storage, as well as afforestation. Children, as an active agent of climate change and water adaptation, can advocate positive change. Directions can potentially encourage more adults to engage in climate actions, promote sustainable development, and encourage the preservation of local knowledge. Multi-level communication is also required to children to help them join in wider adaptation circles beyond their community and integrate formal knowledge from their school and local beliefs into more extensive actions. For the last example, ecosystem-based adaptation or EBA in water resource management, we would like to address the role of healthy ecosystem as a pathway of building resilience. Ecosystem-based adaptation or EBA in water planning of Thailand highlights the maintenance of wetland ecology, river and tidal flow, and other natural resources. Currently, the Office of Natural Water Resources or ONWR and GIZ have collaborated and pilot EBA in several river basins, such as the Yom River basins in upper central Thailand, the Hue Sai Bat basin in northeastern Thailand, and Thadi basin in southern Thailand. For example, ONWR and GIZ partnered with local universities to further develop, analyze, and monitor adaptation measures, considering existing water and climate policies to avoid any possible conflicts of interest that may arise. Local researchers explore the use of retention basins, for example, in the Bang Rakam model in the central part of Thailand, and also the use of oxbow lakes in the upper Yom River basin as shown in this picture here, in order to store the flood water and relieve localized flooding and droughts. So EBA initiatives for climate-induced water management in Thailand have partly exist both at the policy and practical levels. Although Thailand has initiated many projects to increase adaptive capacity in water sector to vulnerable people and ecosystem in dealing with climate variability, we would like to argue that the challenge for implementing water management under climate change is still apparent. The most apparent gap we found in this paper is the absence of good horizontal coordination between the government and the local level. We also need coherent task allocation across stakeholders, public non-governmental sectors, generations, and areas. And we believe that there's still a room for further integration with more recent adaptation methods. In this sense, the government agencies could act as leaders for climate resilient future in order to ensure local empowerment, especially for the powerless ones, as well as secure existing adaptive capacity. Both actions would leave no one behind, particularly local citizens from policy making in climate and water adaptation. So the questions are warmly welcome, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to present my book chapter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pattai, for very interesting case study, 3 case studies, really interesting. And now I would like to turn the floor to our audience, and we have the 2 questions. And the first question is from Chandani Noon. The question just first, we would like to ask you to provide the question is, can you provide more information regarding the early warning system application in Thailand? And the second one is wondering with regard to the insurance policy, is there any insurance policy for loss and damage caused by climate change in Thailand? A particular how far can they go to the urban or rural areas? So that's the first round of the question.
Yeah,
Mr. Pattai.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to answer the first question about early warning system first. So right now, people can access early warning system through the website. So the Royal Irrigation Department and also the Office of National Water Resources launched their early warning website. So you can follow the news about storms, flooding, or drought warning. And they update like day by day, and it's, I mean, the early warning system is a near real-time one. So I think for the technical practitioners or for the scientific practitioners in the organization, I think it's quite easy for them to access the information. But the information that appear on the website is still quite difficult for the people, for the local citizens to understand, because it's quite too, in my opinion, I think it's too technical and too scientific for them. So we need a mechanism to transfer the early warning system to be easily understood for local citizens as well. And for the insurance system in Thailand, as far as I know, I think we don't have the insurance system yet. I mean, we may have like the private sector, some private insurance company who launched the insurance system. But in terms of the policy level, the insurance system is becoming a part of post-2050 adaptation targets in our national adaptation policy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the very comprehensive answer. Let me go to another round of questions. The first question would like to learn more about the roles, because you mentioned about the role of children in climate change adaptations response. And do you see any role of youth participation, youth and religious, for example, a temple, a Buddha or temples, in contributing to climate resilience or capacity building to respond to climate change? And a second question we get is the role of technology for climate change response. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As we work with the local ethnic groups in the northern part of Thailand, I mean, I also put some of my case studies that I study in the last 2-3 years about child-centered approach of adaptation. I don't think that the religious group in the local community play important role in adaptation yet, but the most important agent that can help children right now is a local school in that area. So in terms of that's why I put in the recommendation here that we should have the multi-level communication with the stakeholders who deliver some kind of local beliefs, or who can like integrate this knowledge, I mean the knowledge of climate change adaptation, which is very formal, to the local beliefs, which is also related to their daily life too. And about the role of technology, right, in the rural area of northern Thailand, or in which cases? So may I, yes.
Any question? Any roles with from your case study? Is there anything you can share? Yeah.
So in terms of the technology, I think I think I can answer quite widely about the use of technology in water sector under climate change. So right now, as far as I know, they try to change their practices in managing the water from the engineering one to the mixed methods or the integrative methods. For example, they try to invite some kind of international organization to initiate some ecosystem-based adaptation. But in terms of wider applications throughout the country, I didn't see this point yet, but they put this thing in the policy already. So we need to trace the progress of ecosystem-based adaptation, and also the use of other kinds of non-structural approaches in managing water very soon, maybe like in 2030 or something. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Pautai. Again, times have come to an end to our session. Very interesting for discussion on topic on climate change adaptations. So I would now like to ask for the round for applause to Mr. Pautai, and we move on onto the next sessions on climate finance. It's very important topic as well. Contribute to in addressing climate change. In terms of climate change mitigations and adaptation, climate finance play essential roles to address this long-term threat caused by climate change. So I would now like to turn the floor to Dr. Sitsapat to address the topics. Dr. Sitsapat, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kabiset, and the speakers, participants who joined this online workshop this afternoon. And very great honors to join this important workshop, and I would like to share some of the what I have wrote within the book chapter about the financial mechanism for climate change, not only in Cambodia, but it provide some information about the available funds within in the world, and how many countries that can have a chance to take funding for developing their country. So content of this introduction overview of sustainable financing in climate change, finance climate change issues, global finance architectures, sustainable finance mechanism for ASEAN country, and conclusion. Oh, I don't know why sorry. Why is it come to this? Sorry, yes, climate change have been discussed already, how the climate change have been impacted to the world's global economies, our livelihood of our community, and the development of the economy of each nation. And now we face with the climate change. And our speaker has also present about the mitigation, about adaptation. All those things can be happened as long as we have a finance mechanism to support the action. And the people already know that money is not a problem, but no money is a problem, because all adaptation, mitigation can be happen. We need the finance. And we can see the some history of financial in issues that have been discussed in many years ago, probably in around 1992, and during the World Summit on Biodiversity Conservation and Sustainable Development. They also talks about how to get finance from different the government agencies, multilateral bank, different partners to work together to put all the fund for sustainable development as well as the climate change. The theory of the meeting is like a top content of the parties. Later on, have a talking about this, and especially the COP21 in Paris 2015 is the big event that discussing about financial mechanism to support the climate change projects, and this mostly dealing with the developed country, the rich country, industrialized country that have to channel the finance, the fund into to assist developing countries or developing country or least developed country. So this kind of thing they have the exist and happen in the pipeline of that. And here they have also established the term sustainable finance, and some people they say green finance, climate fund, green investment fund, etc., into this. And also there are some country in European country in Americas, they also form this, and especially under the framework of UN ASEAN they create the different finance mechanism, like EU. They say the EU finance taxonomy, and ASEAN country they also try to formulate their own mechanism like ASEAN taxonomy as well, that encourage the finance flow from different partner, different stakeholder, different markets, development bank to put into here. And under the condition of COVID-19, they have also addressed the sustainable finance that plays an important role in supporting the recovery of post-COVID. This all so addressed in every COP conference of the parties about the sustainable financing. As I mentioned earlier, there's some history of climate finance and its progress. First of all, 1992, and then 1997, the Kyoto protocols, and then addressed about action to combat climate change. And then they also development partner in the EU, CEDA, USA, and many other that put the money into projects. And there are also the emerging events happening in the COP21 in Paris in 2015. Country has a pledge big funds to develop to support the project dealing with climate change, mitigation as well as adaptation. And this have been good even that country in the world have also talking about and also discussing how the finance can be channelized and contribute from different partners. Through the UN FCC, all the country have put their efforts as well as the resource to that. And this they have also the form of the climate finance, just like international, multilateral, bilateral, and regional activity that they say global climate finance architectures, and they are the big deals have been discussed, and Global Climate Fund update, they have also formed this architecture, this diagram that show different contributor for the climate funds, and this have been, formed as the sustainable financing for the world, especially developing country and least developed can absorb the fund with different capacity, with different, political as well socio-economic development. And you can see from here, they are contributed from, Australia, Canada, EU, France, Spain, UK, Japan, Germany, Japan, Norway, US, Denmark, others. They have put a lot of money into that, and they are the bilateral institution. This they're dealing with two countries from one to another that have established their funding. And multilateral institution, UNFCCC, they manage this, and through content of the party mechanism that can happen. Like you can see, green climate funds, adaptation fund, global environmental facility. This have been, channels or mechanism that put funds together that the country that are impacted by climate change, they can access to them. And the non-UNFCCC financial mechanism, they have IFA, they have ASAP, they have also UNEP, they have also FFO that manage this funding through different agency, and this mostly developing country and least developed country. These are the target that we focusing, especially from developed country and from UN bilateral or multilateral, the mechanism that support the climate action within developing and least developed country. But for the ASEAN, the country, I think we have the member of UNFCCC. We also follow the standard operation as a taxonomy that developed by the EU. And so in 2017, the ASEAN country secretariat, they also announced the development of ASEAN taxonomy on sustainable financing for climate program and projects. For this case, Cambodia have also one of the members. We are active in this kind of establishment of finance mechanism, and we have also like Cambodia Climate Fund, Cambodia Climate Change Alliance, who manage the fund, and under Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Economy and Finance, that work with different bilateral donors, multilateral donors, UN agency that have managed this. And I believe that, as you know, that each the government agency and ministry, the sectoral ministry, they have also adopted their climate change strategic plan, climate change action plan, and they have also addressed the issues of financial, the mechanism, how to get the funding from different donors as well. And for the case of Asia, for example, physical infrastructure development in Asia, about 1.7 trillion annually that address the gap for the development for the combating the climate change only in the sector infrastructures. For the period between 2016 to 2030, Asian country, they need about 26.2 trillion for infrastructure development, and this 3.6 trillion for climate mitigation and adaptation. And among those, 50% for power, 2% for transportation, 9% for telecommunication, and 3% for water and sanitation. So this, dealing with the infrastructure alone, and is the key backbone, the key stone for economic development, as well as the well-being of the people within each country. So, financial capital. Yeah, and so many people they have also established a strategy and plan. If there's no financial mechanism, we cannot do anything without the finance. And there also the need for financial resource for climate change action plan and the other immediate action to combat climate change, and then we follow UNFCCC mechanism as well as the EU Green Deal, and maybe we develop also ASEAN Green Deal as well for that. And implementation of the ASEAN taxonomy will vary from one country to another based on their capacity, based on political environment and the government aspect. So this is my short presentation, and we have also discussed in detail in our book chapter about this, and I have also put the pledge of finance resource that pledge promised by developed country for the climate change action, mitigation as well as adaptation. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Sispa, for the short but comprehensive presentation of different aspects of financial aspect for climate change. Yeah, we received a question first again from Danny. What is the challenge for integrating sustainable finance, particularly in Cambodia? That are the first questions. And another question relating to that, there are, as you pointed out, there are various sources of funding available, but there remains a problem in accessing to those funds. So are there any mechanism in helping developed country for accessing to funding? That's the second question, or vice versa. Thank you, Dr. Sis.
Thank you, Dr. Kabisat, and the question from the panelists, from our participant. Cambodia, financial mechanism have been established within the Ministry of Environment and the managed by Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Economy, and this have been mobilized the resource not only from the development partner but from our national budget as well. As in, the guideline for each sector ministry to plan their budget, there are some certain provisions addressed by the Royal Government of Cambodia. Each sector ministry have to address budget lines with regard to climate change, and this also the resources have been mobilized with participation from private sector as well. This this kind of like sustainable financing mechanism that the government, Royal Government of Cambodia encourage all the donors, private sectors, and the budget, the national budget, that how we can make sure the fund can be mobilized, the fund can be sustained for the program, for the project, because all this have been institutionalized within the government system. So we hope that by applying the institutionalized system, the fund can can sustain for the long term, because whatever we do, we also thinking about the climate change and the return from the investment. Yeah. For second, I think for second question, there are also the window that each country that can access to climate change fund within multilateral donors because you are a member of UNCCC, and UNCCC, they have also the program and the mechanism that each country can access. For example, right now they have green climate fund, which is a very big fund. They have $1 trillion that each country have applied, but this they have to follow their procedure, their system. For example, Cambodia's Ministry of Environment, they have also like accredited entity. They can submit the project to Green Climate Fund. For example, we have like a climate change value chain, agricultural value chain project being implemented by Ministry of Agriculture, Water Resource, and Rural Development. I think they have the fund about $140 million being implemented by the government. And there are some other projects being on the pipelines, submitting to the Green Climate Fund. For example, the agriculture, ecological friendly, something that being submitted by UN FAOs with cooperation with Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agriculture for Cambodia. I think the other country in ASEAN nation, they have also a similar process within their the channel to UNFCCC and their national mechanism. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to Dr. Smart for the very detailed explanations and answer to our audience. Since the time's already run out and we still have our next session, so we'd like to ask you to join us all to congratulate Dr. Smart and give him a round of applause. And would like to close these sessions, and let's move on to the next sessions. Would like to invite our distinguished guest, Dr. Christian Hubner, who is also an editor of the book, to give his closing remark. Dr. Christian Hubner, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyo, and a lot of thanks to all panelists and contributing authors, and a lot of thanks to the Asian Vision Institute for this excellent cooperation, which results in this excellent book, which contains a lot of valuable information, very recently, very timely, with regard to the climate change we are in. Climate governance in the ASEAN is extremely important. The region is of high value and high relevance for global development. Therefore, it's important to have a very, very good information which this book provides to a much more broader audience. And I'll make it very short because we have already listened to this excellent presentation, which I think provides a very good start and maybe serves as a kind of incentive to watch out to our book, which is already online. You can find it already on the website of the Asian Vision Institute or on our institute. Later it will be printed. And I'm really looking forward to further collaboration with the Asian Vision Institute on this topic, and would like to thank again explicitly Keo Pizit and Alfredo Paninzales for having me and all here today. And that's actually all from my side. It was really, really interesting to listen to you and getting some more information a bit behind what you can find in the book. And of course, I would like to thank all attending participants for providing this excellent question, which gives a kind of further incentive to read the report. With this, I give it back to Keo, and I would like to thank again on behalf of the Regional Project Energy Security and Climate Change of the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hubner. Before we proceed to our session, I would like all authors and distinguished guests to open the camera, to turn on your camera so that we can take group photos. And The host, can you facilitate this? Host.
Yes, when we are capturing the
Okay,
picture.
please count 1 to 3.
1, 2, 3. Yes, again. 1, 2, 3. Single.
Okay, so yeah, on behalf of the editors again, and also from on behalf of CAS and Asian Vision Institute and all the team, would like to thank you all. Thank you to the authors and also the distinguished guests and all participants, authors and participants for attending this important seminar. And we will please stay tuned and access to the book if you'd like to read further. Without further ado, I would like to express my sincere appreciation and call for close of the session for the book launch event today. Thank you very much and have a good one to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.